and welcome to Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy. I'm your host Leo, and today we are talking the weird, wonderful world of the animated Lord of the Rings films. Now, this includes all of the pre-Peter Jackson animated films. We are not including War of the Rohirrim, as one, I have yet to watch it. Two, it is very recent and tied to the Peter Jackson films. And three, it's completely unrelated to these things. As these ones that I'm going to be talking about are kind of their own weird bubble, and even within themselves are weird bubbles of like self-contained weirdness. We're going to explore a lot of the kind of behind the scenesiness of them because actually funnily enough, a lot of these have a ton of behind the scenesy stuff to talk about. So, what exactly are we talking about? You may have never heard of the animated Lord of the Rings. So, way back when, we're going to start all the way at the beginning, some guy got hold of the rights to The Hobbit and was planning on making a feature-length animated film based on The Hobbit. But he was running out of time. His deadline was coming up, so as many people who hold the rights to a thing but have not yet made the thing that they promised to make with it, they shit out a technicality. So, thus produces the 1966 The Hobbit, which was more of a demo reel, if anything, a proof of concept that wasn't really ever meant to be seen by anyone, but it was uncovered relatively recently, I believe, and shown. So basically what ended up happening was this guy, he had the rights to The Hobbit, but just couldn't make the thing yet. He just, for some reason, hadn't made it. And he was able to distribute this, quote unquote. He basically showed it in one theater, or he went to a few theaters, and pretty much just paid a bunch of people to say, yeah, we watched The Hobbit, and they watched this like 16-minute cartoon. Overall, it's funny and very, very inaccurate to the book, but it's funny what they choose to keep at least vaguely right. Starting with, so we have Bilbo, and Bilbo is accosted and put on by not 13 dwarves, but 3 survivors of the Kingdom of Dale. One of which is Thorin Oakenshield. Another is like a court jester or something. And the last is a princess. Bilbo is convinced to go when the princess says that she'll go, and Bilbo's like, no, she is but a child. She cannot go face a dragon alone, so I must away on this journey. And Gandalf's like, damn right, off you go, and just literally waves them off as they leave. They go, Bilbo falls in a hole, meets Gollum, and gets the ring. Gollum leads the way out. Bilbo follows, slips away, rejoins the group. They make it to the Lonely Mountain, and the desolation of, what do they call him? I think they called him Smoog, or something like that. But they make it there. They get the Arkenstone, which is a heart-shaped gem. They make a giant arrow out of the Arkenstone and a giant crossbow just out of mining materials, and they shoot it into Smoog, dragon, and kill him. Story ends. Bilbo marries the princess, and all is right in the world. The end. That's it. It's a very simple, very weird story, but quite funny to watch if you've got nothing else to do for about 12-ish minutes. 12 to 16 minutes. Very, very fun. Yes, the more interesting thing is the behind the scenes. So not only did this guy plan on making a feature-length film, I don't know if the story he intended to do was going to be 100% the same or anything like that, but he did intend to make a feature-length film. But even though he was able to retain the rights after releasing this pile of crap, he decided to sell it back to the Tolkien estate for $100,000, the equivalent today of almost $1 million. So, yeah, he basically shot out a 12-minute video that had little to no animation and then was like, Okay, if you want the rights back now, you can have them for $1 million. And he got it. So there's that. Next, the rights went to Rankin Bass. Now, Rankin Bass is a fantastic, beautiful little company, or at least it was, that made very kitschy stop motion cartoons. They also made some 2D animated features. Honestly, their version of The Hobbit is not terrible. Overall, it's kind of fun to watch, and seeing it as it is, it's, you know, a Rankin Bass TV special. It's not terrible. It's fun. It has music, some music that goes pretty damn hard, even for like today's standards. Overall, it's pretty fun. Oh, and I guess it's a good time here to slide in and say why I decided to watch these in the first place. So, I'm a tad overweight. You don't really ever see me in things, but you might notice in the thumbnails and whatnot that I've made in the past that I'm a bit rotund. Like, I'm not super big or anything like that, but I do want to try to get to a healthier weight. Because slowly but surely, especially with the job that I have been gaining more weight, and I don't like that. So, in order to help curb that and turn it around, I have bought a treadmill to try and exercise and get healthier. So, I thought of a really dumb idea. What if I walked alongside the Fellowship for the Peter Jackson films? So the idea is that I walk from the beginning of the film to the end of the film. But, one, I've been relatively sedentary for quite a while. So I decided I wanted something to help ease me into it. A tester, if you will. And while looking for feature-length films to watch, I decided to watch the original Hobbit. Not the 12-minute one. That one I watched at work as a joke. But this one, the Rankin Bass Hobbit, is a nice hour and 18 minutes. A perfect introductory thing to see, like a proof of concept for myself to see if I could walk the entire length of a film. And I did it. It worked. I was tired as hell afterwards and I had burned 300 calories, but I did it and it worked pretty well and was fun. And I planned on doing it again. Then I got sick. Yeah, when I went to watch the next film, because I decided what I would do is I would watch all three main, like, feature-length animated films. Then I would start watching, like, The Hobbit. And the plan is to do the extended cuts of all of the films except for Unexpected Journey, because Unexpected Journey's extended version is not available on Max for some reason. I walked the entire length of The Hobbit. Then for The Lord of the Rings, I walked a little bit of it, but I stopped because I wasn't feeling great. And it turns out it's because I was getting sick. I got sick. And then for Return of the King, I walked most of it, though I did take a small break part of the way through because I was still recovering. And also my treadmill, I might have over-oiled it, and so the belt is slipping a bit off to the side. So it'll work its way off to one side and then it'll slip off to the other side. So I need to do some tweaking and whatnot to make sure it doesn't do that. I've gotten it to a pretty comfortable place to where it doesn't do it super often, and if it does, it's not too jarring. That's the basic idea. Is I plan on doing a ton of walking while watching the main thing, but I needed something as an introduction, and I think overall it helped prove the concept. Now I need to start prepping to tackle the main films. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to try to get up each day, walk at least an hour every day, and then on my days off, at least one of them, I will watch a full Lord of the Rings film while walking. So, decent, big burst, then decent, that kind of thing. We'll see. Now, on to the story of Rankin Bass's Hobbit. For the most part, it is book accurate. It's a bit fast-forwarded in comparison to, say, definitely in comparison to the Peter Jackson films or the book in general. But it does go from set piece to set piece relatively fast. It doesn't do terribly, though, as it keeps a decent pace going until it kind of just needs to get out of a thing. It really ends up highlighting some of the issues that the Hobbit book has, where they're stuck in a situation and then Gandalf appears out of nowhere and solves the problem. It really does that. But it gets into the adventure relatively fast. They go from set piece to set piece relatively fast. Gandalf saves them about 3 times before they get to the Lonely Mountain. And then once they're there, they pretty much get things done pretty fast. There's still the, Smaug's attack, the Battle of Five Armies. There is some annoyances, like some of the songs, while they do go really hard and are pretty good overall, they do end up covering up the dialogue of the film a lot. So it'll be an intense action scene and the dwarves will be saying something, or Bilbo will be saying something, but you can't hear it because the music's like da 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 da. So yeah, you don't hear shit. But they keep fairly accurate to the book. They take some liberties with some designs. Gollum is about what you would expect Gollum to look like, except that he's more fish-like. And I believe that's because the Rankin Bass Company, they took the interpretation of, because they describe, I believe in the book, Gollum as a wet, slimy creature. And that's because he's been living in a dark, dank cave. So that's the version that they go with, is they go for like a green fish man. Yeah, otherwise, same thing. Gollum leads Bilbo out unknowingly, thinking that Bilbo's already trying to escape out the way that he thinks he's going. But they get out. He rejoins with the group. Him and Thorin butt heads every so often, but not too much. Then there's the main battle. And of course, Bilbo gives the Arkenstone to, gives it to the guy who kills Smaug, who then was named king, as a bartering chip, and because of this, Thorin gets all pissy. But in the end, they're able to wrap it up pretty nice. I believe, so Bilbo in this, he just fucks off. He's like, screw this, and he just leaves. Sits by a tree until one of the dwarves comes up, dies next to him, is like, hey, we won, but it's not great. And then Gandalf tells him, like, yeah, so there's like 7 dwarves left, but soon there's gonna be 6, so you might want to say your goodbyes to Thorin, because he got really fucked up. And when Bilbo talks to Thorin, he's like, oh, you escaped the battle unharmed, that's good. And Bilbo's like, yeah, I was like knocked out pretty early on, so yeah. Even though I'm pretty sure that is what happens in the book. In the book, I think Bilbo like gets knocked out or something, and then just wakes up at the end of the battle. And I think in this, they just decided, nah, he just left. He went off to the side and then came back later. But yeah, so that happens. Thorin dies. Bilbo goes home, and it's the end. The art style of this one is fascinating. So it is kind of ugly. Most of the hobbits and the dwarves. So the dwarves look almost like Snow White dwarves. So the dwarves look almost like Snow White dwarves, and the hobbits look like Cabbage Patch dolls. And Gandalf has some weird motions, and he just like fades into existence at times. It's hilarious and great, and there's some edits that have been made of this film that are top notch and hilarious. But from this film, the confusion starts. The weird ass shit starts. Because from this point, there is an issue with Rankin Bass, where pretty much this is the era where Rankin Bass is having financial troubles to the max. They got this TV special. It was decently-ish received, but, they thought that the music was prioritized a lot more over than the animation and the story. And instead of being like a full feature-length film, it was only about an hour, 18 minutes. So it fell a bit short of feature length. And it also has very obvious ad breaks in it. It is rampant with the 70s, 80s danger break scenarios where like a thing happens, you hear a musical sting, and then it fades to black where a commercial is supposed to be put in. Because of this, they start making a sequel to this, but not in the way you would think. They start making a Return of the King adaptation, but not a full one. So instead of doing like the entirety of the Lord of the Rings and whatnot, they only start doing the Return of the King adaptation. While at the same time, technically, there's an animated Lord of the Rings adaptation being made that covers the first 2 books. Now, the Rankin Bass one takes forever. In fact, it might actually start during... I think there is like a weird legal thing where they technically started Return of the King before they started doing the Lord of the Rings one. And there's this whole kerfuffle. There's like a big feud between the 2 creators. Yeah, so they start doing a Return of the King. And the one guy that's doing the Lord of the Rings thing, he's doing an adaptation that covers the first 2 books, and he's planning on like splitting it into 2 things. So he plans on doing Lord of the Rings and then like Lord of the Rings Part 2, and then it would be the Return of the King. But there's like a legal issue and there's a whole kerfuffle. It's a mess. Overall, his Lord of the Rings, the animated one just called Lord of the Rings, isn't bad. It's a little bit cram-packed, I'll say. It has some decent humor, decent friendship going on. The rotoscoping's not terrible, in my opinion. Like, there's a lot of it, but it's not terrible. It is funny just watching what amounts to just real actors in an animated film just standing around. It's funny. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Now, this one starts with a introduction talking about Gollum. And it does include a little bit of an introduction to Bilbo as well. And how Bilbo went on this journey, got the ring, came back, and didn't know what it was. And it also includes the ridiculous time jumps that end up happening in the book, where like 17 years pass between the beginning, when Bilbo has his birthday party, and when Frodo is set to leave to like go on his journey. A huge time span happens. It's a bit silly, but I believe that is book accurate. But anyway, so in this one, the Hobbits' designs are also a bit odd, but they're a lot closer to what we would end up seeing in Peter Jackson's films. In fact, a lot of what we see in this film kind of makes its way into the Peter Jackson films. There's some things that not quite, and Peter Jackson makes it a little bit more gritty and real than some things. Like Wormtongue in this is fucking weird. He's just like a wheelie little guy with like a pencil thin mustache, and he's like super tiny, just kind of like crawling around everywhere. I don't know if that's book accurate. I haven't read the books yet. I will soonish, maybe in the intermission between challenges. It follows pretty closely. In fact, having at least at one point seen the Peter Jackson films, I do recognize a lot of the set pieces, a lot of the scenarios that end up happening. You see a lot of the influence that this had on the Peter Jackson films. And there's actually some drama between the creator of this and Warner for the Peter Jackson films and whatnot. Because at the same time that the Peter Jackson films were being made, the creator of this, the like lead animator of this, was offered to make the sequel to it. But he was so butthurt that they didn't let him know that Peter Jackson was making the films, like the live action films, and didn't let him help on the Peter Jackson films, that he said no. Which I find hilarious. The guy had the opportunity to complete his film, and he said no. So, yeah, I understand, like, the whole, it's a matter of principle thing. But at the same time, dude, they were pretty much offering you free money. Because, yeah, sure, it might have been overshadowed a little bit by the Peter Jackson films. But at the same time, dude, you could finish your film, and people would be able to, enjoy it, and you would be able to more distance yourself from the Rankin Bass stuff, because currently his thing accidentally slides perfectly between the 2 Rankin Bass films, because it covers exactly what the Rankin Bass stuff doesn't. It's just mind-boggling to me, to be honest. But yes, so some set pieces that match up, that are quite similar, are the designs of the hobbits look quite similar. There is the scene where the Nazgul, the ring wraiths are hunting them in the forest, and there's the leaning over the log scene. That is almost pulled directly from this and put into the Peter Jackson films. Then there is some things like the waves look very similar to that. It's just there's so much that looks quite similar. It's like so close in similarity to it. But yeah. Then we have this. The story goes all the way to pretty much through the Two Towers, because it goes to Helm's Deep, the defense of Helm's Deep, and that's where the film ends. So we do get the fight with the Balrog. We get some very interesting scenes there. We get some very close dialogue things that almost are similar to what they end up being in the Peter Jackson films. In fact, the Fly You Fools is part of it, but it happens like as he's falling down, and it's like the third time he's told him to fucking run away. And it's like as he's falling to his death. The Balrog design is fine, if I remember. It's like a weird guy in a costume, or like a model thing that kind of like flies on strings. It's very silly. Gandalf in this is pretty good. He has a lot of CDI Princess of Zelda about him, of just like a little too much movement to try to convey stuff, so he'll like just be shifting around as he's talking constantly. Overall, a pretty fun Gandalf. The designs overall in all of these, Gandalf is nailed every time. You look at that and you're like, that's Gandalf. Even in the weird crappy Hobbit, even though it's the most different of them, you look at him and you're like, that's Gandalf. And that works for me. That's a good Gandalf. Gimli has some decent presence. Gimli and elf name Legolas. Gimli and Legolas, they have decent presences in here, and they have some funny rapport. They're a lot more friendly than they are in the Peter Jackson films, but they also only have like 10 lines each, if that. Yeah, it's about 2 hours long. I do wish I had walked most of it, but I didn't. I think it is fairly book accurate, and it's at the very least very similar to what we end up seeing in the Peter Jackson films, so overall, pretty good. But I think that's going to be all I can really say about that, because story-wise, yeah, they just wander through the woods. They get through to... They end up in Rivendell, meet up with Bilbo. Bilbo gives Frodo the mithril shirt and Sting. Does ask to see the ring, but then accepts not seeing the ring, and they leave. They go on their merry way. Bilbo does get like a spear straight to the chest, but the mithril armor saves him. They go through the Mines of Moria. That's where the Balrog ends up appearing. They work their way through out there. Boromir spooks Frodo away. Sam goes with Frodo. They boat along their merry way, and they end up working their way through Mordor, or towards Mordor, while Merry and Pippin, also in the search for Frodo, end up disappearing and end up in the company of orcs. And then at some point they escape the company of orcs and end up in the woods with Treebeard and just hanging out with Treebeard. And then there's in general Helm's Deep. Then they Helm's Deep. They're able to really quickly convince the king to ignore Wormtongue and just move on. They're like, hey, he was with fucking Saruman, and Saruman's in league with Sauron, so why the fuck would you listen to him? And the king's like, oh shit, you're right. Okay, time to go defend Mordor. Or not Mordor, Helm's Deep. But yeah, so that film ends in a weird way. It ends basically saying, and thus evil was pushed back and defeated, but oh, there was technically more. And then Gandalf throws his sword up into the sky and is like, maybe there's more to tell, maybe not, who knows? And then it ends. Now, supposedly the ending, when given the opportunity to make a sequel, instead, he decided to redo the end of this to try to make it more of a definitive ending, which I think is where the "and thus evil was defeated and driven from the earth" line came from. I think if given the chance today, he might take the opportunity to actually finish it. At the same time, like, I don't think he might not have access to like any of the actors that he did then in order to do it. But yeah, plus the methodology is pretty much dead now. The rotoscoping and whatnot. Although it's made a slight revival recently, I think, in certain things. But yeah, I don't think that he really would make it today, if he even could. Oh well. Now, part of the reason that he didn't make the sequel is there was a lawsuit that ended up happening. And Rankin Bass, because they were already working on Return of the King, just released it as Return of the King, i.e. kind of finishing this weird-ass trilogy of films. Originally, they were going to release the Return of the King film as Frodo, The Hobbit 2. And that makes a lot of sense when you try to watch Return of the King, because Return of the King, once again, goes back to the art style of the Rankin Bass film, because it's a direct sequel to The Hobbit. The main song that constantly gets driven into your skull throughout the film is Frodo of the Nine Fingers, because this is supposed to be Frodo's tale. At the end of everything, as they're sitting reminiscing about, like, oh, it was such a long, hard battle, etc., it's time for us to just kind of chill the hell out. They are talking with Bilbo about his adventure, and there's a small recap of The Hobbit. And then there's a little bit of a recap and discussion of Frodo's adventure, because Bilbo notices that Frodo is missing a finger. And Gandalf's like, oh yeah, we have a bard over here that has a song to tell you about what happened. And the bard goes, Frodo of the Nine Fingers. And he appears out of nowhere. It's just basically the story of how Frodo lost his finger. And we get a small recap not only of The Hobbit, but a bit of Frodo's journey leading up to the Return of the King. Now, it skips a lot. And by a lot, I mean, of course, 2 whole books. It skips them going through the Mines of Moria. It skips the battle at Helm's Deep. It skips all the way to Frodo and Sam are in Mordor. More specifically, Frodo is captured by the orcs, and Sam tries to journey alone before realizing he has to go back and get Frodo. So he goes back into the orc camp, finds Frodo, gives him back the ring, and they continue their journey. And it's mostly just Frodo and Sam suffering as they slowly drag themselves through Mordor. Then we keep hopping to Minas Tirith, where they are making their last stand as the Gondorians are trying to save themselves, essentially, and they're hoping for Rohan to come to their aid, but they're unsure. Currently, I believe Merry and/or Pippin are trying to negotiate that from Rohan, but they don't know the results. While I believe it's Pippin is hanging out with Gandalf here at Minas Tirith, just trying to keep shit together. And we just kind of hop back and forth between these 2 scenes throughout the film. We see some defense, and then we go and watch Frodo and Sam suffering in the hot, hot lava. And then we go back to see some more defense. And then we go and see Frodo and Sam falling in a pit and falling asleep for a bit. We also get a lot of extended fantasy sequences. So, for example, when Sam first takes on the ring before he goes back to save Frodo, he has an extended fantasy sequence of him leading an army against Sauron and defeating him before he's like, oh yeah, I could be Sam the Powerful. And then he's like, oh no, I'm a gardener. I don't need a big old garden. I just need a little one. I'm happy. And then we get an extended fantasy sequence of him trying to raise a family and just live a simple life. The simple farmer, simple gardener life. And he accepts his fate. Then when we get to Frodo gets the ring, and of course he gets very snippy about the thing. Sam just being like, hey man, you're pretty fucking weak after spending who knows how long just being tortured here. So we need to, I'll hold on to the ring just a little bit longer until you get your strength back up. And Frodo's like, fuck you, give me the fucking ring. And Sam's like, Jesus, fine, here. But let me keep your sword, at least, because, again, you're really fucking weak, and I don't know, I kind of like having the sword. To which Frodo's like, yeah, sure. And then they don goblin or orc armor, and then they just mosey on their way, eventually getting recruited by a orc army, which, by the way, has the best song of the entire film, because the Frodo of the Nine Fingers is a fine, like, overarching song. It's good for the beginning, good for the end, a little bit annoying in the middle. But this song is really good, and it's basically about how all of these, like, orcs don't want to be in the army, but hey, as long as there's that guy with the whip, they're gonna keep on marching, because fuck that. So yeah, it's a very fun thing. I recommend you look it up if you haven't heard it. And I also recommend you look up some of the Hobbit's soundtrack from the 70s Hobbit, because, again, a lot of those songs are pretty good too. In the end, they, of course, go and defeat they're able to push back the invaders at Minas Tirith, because Aragorn finally returns, and the black ships that they were all fearing were going to be reinforcements for Sauron's army actually was Aragorn and reinforcements for their army. So they were able to fully push back all of them, and then they begin their attack campaign, so that they were able to successfully defend, rout, and then they pushed their advantage and went on the attack, heading towards Mordor. They go to the gates and find the mouth of Sauron, and are about to engage in battle there, when finally Sam is able to catch up with Frodo, except for Frodo's been wrestling with Gollum, and Gollum, he's back. So I forgot to mention Gollum in the Lord of the Rings, but so they actually get to the point where Sam and Frodo find and start interacting with Gollum and get Gollum on side. This version of Gollum in the Lord of the Rings animated movie looks very similar to the version of Gollum in Peter Jackson's film. And it also is because they actually use that bit of information that Gollum was a hobbit, because at the very beginning they show, like, the struggle that he had with his friend, where he ends up killing his friend, and he found the ring while he was fishing and whatnot. So there's a lot of extra information that we're given, and yeah, it's pretty interesting. This one in Return of the King is back to the type of Gollum from the first film, so The Hobbit, but he's more green. So for some reason he became a lot more fish-like and more green between the two films, because initially he was gray in the first one. He was, like, more gray but still fish-like, and he had, like, kind of blind, almost unseeing eyes. In this one, he's green and seems to have more, like, vision in his eyes. Anyway, so besides that, we follow them. Like, they don't interact with Gollum for a huge chunk of the film until, like, near the end, when they're climbing up the mountain, and Gollum's just like, hey, no, you don't get to throw my precious in the lava, fuck you. And he starts attacking Frodo. Sam goes to try and attack him, but he's like, oh, I don't want to hit Master Frodo. So he just waits until Frodo is able to throw him off, and then Sam's like, okay, good, finally. Frodo, you fuck off, go up the mountain, I'll deal with him now. And Gollum's like, oh, please don't kill me, I'm pitiful and sad. And Sam's like, yeah, you're weird, pitiful and sad, why would I kill you? Just fuck off. And then he goes off after Frodo and goes in, and Frodo's like, yeah, but I don't want to destroy the ring, so I'm going to put it on and leave. He puts on the ring, and for some reason spends, according to the story, days wandering inside Mount Doom, just hanging out, I guess, until they end up in the deepest chamber. And during this time, so, like, literally it's Sam and Frodo enter Mount Doom, they have this discussion, Frodo puts on the ring, disappears. Then we cut back to the end of the battle at Minas Tirith, and their decision to go and push their advantage, and instead of going directly to Mordor, going around to the slightly less defended, hopefully, area that's more, like, wide, and if they have to fight, they would have a better chance of surviving area. So they go that way, and it takes them days to get there. In the same time, Sam and Frodo have just been wandering inside the mountain. Not climbing it, not doing anything journey. They've just been hanging out inside there until they eventually make their way to the deepest depths, where Frodo is only found by Sam because Gollum found Frodo first and has been wrestling him to the ground, bites off his finger, and then in victory accidentally trips and falls into the lava with the ring. And literally Frodo's like, well, Gollum completed our quest for us. And he's like, well, it's for the better. Let's get out of here. And when the ring is destroyed, the towers fall, Barad-dûn crumbles, all of Mordor starts crumbling, and the Mount Doom starts erupting. They flee out, try to leave, but some issues. And after their discussion with the Mouth of Sauron, they just kind of hang out. And as Mordor is starting to crumble, they're like, oh man, because like it crumbling's not going to be able to know who's good and who's bad. We're all going to die. And Gandalf's like, but wait, eagles. And the eagles come from the sky, pick up the entirety of their army, and leave. And then, well, Frodo and Sam are trying to flee lava. Frodo's like, die well, Sam. And then, but wait, eagles. And the eagles come and rescue them. That does seem to be J.R.R. Tolkien's kind of shorthand for getting people out of a tight situation, is just, and then the eagles came. Because he does it twice in The Hobbit, and then he does it at least once in Lord of the Rings at the end. But I think he actually does it twice in Lord of the Rings as well. So yes, J.R.R. Tolkien's favorite thing is, and then the eagles came. But yeah, so they're rescued, they come back, and they wrap up their story, and they're like, oh man, Bilbo didn't listen to the whole story, he fell asleep, how funny. And then Frodo's like, hey Bilbo, you're coming with us back to Hobbiton, right? So that we can, just do Hobbit shit. And Bilbo's like, what? No, that's gross, man. I'm gonna go to Equivalent of Death, it would seem. And they're like, what? Equivalent of Death? And he's like, yeah, the weird elf boat thing where really old people take this white boat and just fuck off into the ocean to who knows where. And Frodo's like, man, that sounds fucking sick. This whole ordeal just made me know I'm tired, man. I don't want to do any of this anymore. So, cool if I go with you? And they're like, yeah, dude, you saved the world, so fucking hop on, I guess. We don't care. And so, Bilbo, Frodo, Elrond, and Gandalf all fuck off on a boat together. And that's how that ends. Overall, it's fine. It is a very weird situation. Like, if you were to watch only The Hobbit and The Return of the King, you would be so lost. And even with the slight context of, like, the Lord of the Rings animated film, it's still weird. Still very weird. Especially when you look at certain things. Just fucking Aragorn in this film is an entity who just has yet to return. They're just waiting for him. Now, I believe in the books, the context is he was sent off on his own, like, little side quest, and that's him, like, getting the black ships and whatnot. But in the context of this film, it makes it seem like he wasn't part of the adventure at all. They're just someone, he's just a guy there waiting to arrive. Gimli, non-existent. Legolas, non-existent. They're not characters in these films. They got Merry, they got Pippin, they got Frodo, they got Sam, you got Gandalf, and Aragorn's technically there too. You do get some characters, some smaller characters, like, can't remember her name, but the lady that kills the Witch King, or the leader of the Ringwraiths, the man, the creature who cannot be killed by any man, so they used the loophole of, but she is no man, she is a woman, and so thus is able to kill him. It was interesting. I liked the inclusion, the design, pretty good, and the scene overall, not bad. If she had any actual character in the film, that would have been nice too. Because she literally just appears out of nowhere with no context. After she does her bit, do they finally be like, oh yeah, she's that guy's niece, the guy that just fucking died. So that makes sense, that she's here because she's his niece, and she literally after she defeats the Witch King, is like, "You have been avenged, grand uncle, I guess." And so yeah, it's a weird situation there. And then you see her a few more times. She rides like at the head of the army on their way to the northern gate of Mordor, and then she also rides with the king, Aragorn, as they are doing their little tour of, hey, we won, ain't that neat? As they've rebuilt and everything. So she's like an official soldier or something now. I don't know. They don't talk much about her. She's just there a bit. I don't know about her context in the book. I do know she has a little bit more gravity put towards her in the Peter Jackson films. And the funny thing is, her character is introduced and talked about in the Lord of the Rings film, the animated Lord of the Rings film, but in that one, she's just there as an introduction. Her brother gets some screen time, but he literally doesn't say a single line in the film. It's very weird. But, yes. Anywho, that's the animated Lord of the Rings films. They're pretty interesting overall, and I do recommend giving them a look, even if just out of morbid curiosity, to be honest. It's something that you could be like, it exists, it's weird. And hell, even the 12 minutes Hobbit thing that you're not supposed to really watch because it wasn't meant to be seen, give it a go. It's funny. It's 12 minutes out of your day, and it's kind of funny to watch, especially if you've read the book or watched any version of The Hobbit. You'd be like, who? What? Who the hell's this? What's going on? Huh? Why's the map like that? And it's just a ride. I do recommend it. But yes, with that's those. Overall, very fun, very interesting. I did enjoy walking for, I guess, most of them, but I need to do a little bit more prep before I start tackling the main films. But yeah, things are going okay. But anywho, once again, thank you guys so much for listening and watching. I will talk to you guys next week. Goodbye.